Hello, my name is Michelle Reuters and I'm the Associate Dean for Criminology and Justice Studies at RMIT. Today I'm joined by Peter Malins, Robin Cameron and Brianna Chesser, and we're going to tell you a little bit about the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies, Bachelor of Criminal Justice and the Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology. Our programs are world-renowned and they allow students to work across a variety of disciplines to replicate the real-world experience they need once they start their careers. Next slide, please. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Bunwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university. RMIT respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders, past and present. And while we conduct our work remotely, I want to pay my respect to the wider unceded lands of the nation. Next slide, please. Our commitment to reconciliation. RMIT is committed to redefining its relationship in working with and supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander self-determination. The university's goal is to achieve lasting transformation by maturing its values, culture, policy and structures in a way that embeds reconciliation in everything that we do. In line with the principles on Bunjil, we are changing our ways of knowing, working and being to support sustainable reconciliation and activate a relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous staff, students and community. Next slide, please. So to start, Criminology and Justice Studies at RMIT have 3 undergraduate programs that have overlapping themes that allow quite a lot of flexibility across the programs. So what I'll start by doing is I will introduce you to Peter Malins, who is the Program Manager of the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies.
Hi everyone. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Peter Malins and I'm the Program Manager for Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies. And I just want to tell you a little bit about this degree and what to expect. The next slide, please. So the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies is a 3-year undergraduate degree where it combines 3 overlapping and interconnected areas of study. So it's a degree that really looks at the study of law. It looks at the study of socio-legal studies, so studying the law from a sociological perspective. And it's also a degree that looks at alternative dispute resolution processes and mechanisms. So you develop skills in all those 3 areas and their intersections. So in your first year, you really get an introduction to law, so things like criminal and civil law, an introduction to alternative dispute resolution practices and mechanisms, as well as starting to study things to do with power and governance in society and looking at law from a sociological perspective. In your second year, you start to build on those foundational studies to develop a deeper understanding of things like human rights law, family law, and information law, as well as build on your alternative dispute resolution skills and knowledges by engaging with a course called Understanding Conflict and Mediation. You also look at the relationship between law and public policy and develop some more civil related skills in civil procedure. In your final year, you actually build on all of those to develop an understanding of strengthened litigation evidence and proof that's required for litigation. So in terms of civil law, looking at labour relations law, as well as starting to apply your knowledges and skills in readiness for workplace settings. So doing research methods course called Applied Research in Criminological Settings, as well as an organisational practices course. Year 3 is also really exciting because it's when you also get to do an internship, which is usually around 50 days in an agency related to justice and legal studies, where you can really build up your career skills and develop a whole range of skills in terms of applying for jobs and developing networks that actually often get people placed into agencies where they would like to continue work, and many of our students do end up going on working in the agencies where they do their internship. As you'll see in this structure here, there are also 5 electives across the course of your degree. So doing this degree allows you to also find ways to specialise in areas that you'd like to focus in your skills on. So some people choose to really specialise in dispute resolution practices, doing practice of mediation and arbitration, and can actually, through the practice of mediation elective, develop enough skills to apply for accreditation as an independent mediator by the end of your degree. Many of our students have done that and go and work the following year as an independent mediator. You can also specialise in criminal justice or business law or Indigenous studies or gender and things like that if you'd like to as well. Next slide, please. So here is one of my former students, Reem, just talking about why legal and dispute studies really suited her. She was a really impressive student who did a lot of work in the community as well, building up a youth network in her local community, and won an award at RMIT for her studies and her work outside of the university. And Reem says that she's always been deeply interested in human rights and wanted to do something that would make a change to society. For the past 5 years was volunteering at the Flemington and Kensington Community Legal Centre, working in an advocacy role on police accountability and dealing with legal cases of brutality and racialised policing. And the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies, she said, gave me the skills I needed to empower, enrich and amplify the voices that have been lost or silenced in issues that she engages with. And yeah, it was really a pleasure teaching Reem, and she actually went on to do an honours degree year after her Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies, which is an option as well. I now will introduce Rob Cameron, who is the Program Manager for the Bachelor of Criminal Justice. Next slide, please.
Thanks so much, Peter. My name's Robin Cameron, and I'm the Program Manager of the Bachelor of Criminal Justice, the second of our 3 undergraduate programs that we're going to be talking about today. Now, there's a reasonable amount of overlap between all 3 programs, and in a couple of slides' time, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But the one thing I want to emphasise is that there is a sort of shared foundation or base to the 3 degrees. Within the Bachelor of Criminal Justice, what we really aim to do in this degree is develop sort of the key skills and experiences that will allow students to move into the criminal justice sector, working with the main criminal justice organisations in Victoria and also federally. So the way I think of this degree is that there's 2 main streams, and these streams are closely related but subtly different. The first of the 2 streams, as the title of the degree suggests, is criminal justice. And criminal justice is the study of institutions, processes, organisations, the formal aspects of how the criminal justice system in Victoria and Australia works. So these subjects are a little bit more practical in nature, and in some cases are sort of quite directly skill-based. So we can see that in subjects like foundations of policing, introduction to criminal justice, corrections. These give us the sort of foundational understanding of the key agencies of the Victorian and federal criminal justice system. Then we have subjects like forensic interviewing, which teach us about how to conduct not only interviews, but also just to effectively communicate both with peers and also external stakeholders within the criminal justice system. We also have a subject case management practice, which is about how to effectively manage our relationships as professionals with clients. Similarly, professional ethics and conduct teaches us how to effectively engage in a way that's ethically sound. The second stream of the Bachelor of Criminal Justice is what we refer to as criminology. So obviously criminology and criminal justice are very related. They're both to do with crime, but criminology is more about the conceptual study of how and why crime occurs in society. What are the patterns? Who are the offenders? Who are the victims? How can we understand them in a kind of ongoing way? This allows us to not only understand criminal justice as it exists now, or crime as it exists now, but as it's likely to change and evolve in the future. So you have a sort of strong conceptual foundation for understanding how crime functions in society. And you can see these subjects are subjects like criminological theory, foundations of criminology, crime prevention, global crime, and finally, in the final year, contemporary criminology. The key thing about this degree, though, I really want to emphasise, I've mentioned this building of skills in the criminal justice sort of practical stream. This culminates in the final year where we do a sort of double credit subject called the Justice and Legal Internship. And that is a placement of up to 50 days with a criminal justice agency, with one of them in Victoria. This allows students to get sort of practical skills working within a criminal justice organisation, and we've built up really effective partnerships with the major criminal justice agencies in Victoria to make this more effective. Next slide, please. Thank you. One thing we really value about our student alumni is that as they move into the criminal justice sector, they sort of take, in many ways, in many cases, we continue to have ongoing connections with students. So for instance, as they move into the criminal justice sector, many of the placement agencies that students undertake placement with are actually run by former students who now work in those sectors. So there's a really good level of sort of knowledge and awareness of the RMIT criminal justice degree out in the sector. And so when we sort of meet with criminal justice agencies, we always get really positive feedback about the experience of our graduates. So this sort of connection of the conceptual study of crime with the practical skill development is something we really value in this degree, and we think it really gives students the excellent foundation to move into the sector. Thank you. Right now, I'll hand over to Brianna, who will talk more about the Criminology and Psychology degree. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Hi, as Rob said, my name is Brianna Chesser and I am the Program Manager for the Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology. Look, this is a pretty interesting and unique program that sits dually within the criminology space and the psychology space. It actually combines an APAC accredited psychology major with the applied criminology major. That's going to prepare you for a variety of roles, either within the psychology profession, within the criminal justice profession, or in a role that really combines the two. So if you're particularly interested in why people engage in offending behaviour, this really is a degree that you should consider. We spend quite a lot of time developing our understanding of the psychology of crime. In this course, students are taught how to conduct forensic interviews, provide case management for offenders. They're taught how to work with victims of crime and clients with complex needs. One of the key things in this particular degree combination is a focus on communication, a focus on risk assessment, behavioural analysis, and research skills. So if you have a look at the program map that's up on the slide there, you'll see that a number of the subjects are ones that we've already seen today in this presentation. And that's what we mean when we keep saying that these programs have a lot in common. In fact, a lot of those criminology subjects you're going to see repeated in the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies and the Bachelor of Criminal Justice that my learned colleagues have already introduced to you. The point of difference with this degree is really that APAC accredited major. Now, that's the second time you've heard me use the acronym APAC. It stands for the Australian Psychological Accreditation Council. What it means is this 3-year degree sequence is going to be accredited as the first portion of the journey that will lead you to becoming a psychologist. If we can just flick to the next slide, please. Look, this is one of our students, and Jamie says there that they were really interested in becoming a clinical psychologist to work with rehabilitating individuals who have comorbid mental health, drug and alcohol problems. One of the unique parts of the criminology section of this particular degree is the amount of electives that you have. You've got 5 electives out of essentially half a program, which gives you a really good opportunity to be able to customise that criminology portion of your degree to be able to focus on the aspects of criminology and law that particularly interest you. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'll just hand back to Rob, who's going to talk about some differences and similarities in the program.
Thanks, Brianna. So as all 3 of us have mentioned, there is a good deal of overlap between the 3 programs. And the reason this is really great, we think, because as Michelle mentioned in the introduction, this provides prospective students with a good deal of flexibility. So if you're unsure about whether you want to do criminology and psychology, legal and dispute studies, or crim justice, in some ways you don't need to stress too much about this decision. There's quite a lot of overlap between the 3 degrees, particularly in first year. So if in doubt, just think of RMIT as your destination and pick the degree that you think is best. And if it's not exactly right, you can transfer between the 2 during the course of your first year of studies. And you'll definitely be getting a sample of the specific elements within the first year. So if you do criminology and psychology, you'll be doing some subjects that overlap with legal and dispute studies and crim justice, but you'll also be doing some very specific psychology subjects. You'll know exactly what the flavour of the degree is by the end of first year, and you'll know whether it's for you or not. So this kind of overlap we think is really important. It gives also a sense of shared community between the 3 programs, or the 3 degrees as we call them. Yeah, so that will, again, flexibility, shared community, and that sort of common basis in subjects between them. Next slide, please. Peter and Brianna both mentioned the electives that are on offer. So all 3 degrees have at least 4 electives that you can choose. Sorry if you can hear an alarm and someone's at the door. Yeah, but there's a range of electives you can do throughout the course of your studies. By choosing electives, what you do is effectively tell a story about yourself as a student, as a prospective employee of the criminal justice sector. So I like to think of this as building a narrative about yourself, what your interests are, and gaining extra speciality within particular areas. So building up this sort of narrative, like you can sort of pick a combination. You could do victimology, forensic studies, criminal procedure. All of a sudden, you're starting to tell a story about yourself as someone who is interested in the victim experience, how they experience the justice system, and things like that. So, and you can sort of build up a speciality in law, more psychology, and things like this. So these electives are a really crucial part of sort of making the degree your own. Having spoken about that, I might hand back to Brianna, who's going to discuss some of the entry requirements for the programs. Thanks.
Look, traditionally the Atar is one of the most popular questions that we get on open day. So we thought we might take this opportunity to just guide you through some of the differences in Atar and prerequisites. Hopefully you can all see the screen here. I'm just going to lean forward because my screen's a little bit small. We're sitting firmly in the 70s mark for the Atars for all 3 programs. You can see there that the Atars for Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies and Bachelor of Criminal Justice are very close at 70 and 70.65. The Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology is just a little bit higher, sitting around the 73 mark. In terms of the domestic prerequisites, we're really looking for, if a student has completed VCE, that they have received at least a 30 in English. And that's pretty standard across the board there. Look, I don't think there's too much variation in the entry requirements. I think the similarities in the entry requirements and the Atar sort of lends itself to the point that we've been making about the courses being quite similar in nature. I think the only reason for the tiny jump there with the Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology is probably because of the psychology element. it requires a particular interest in the sciences and all those sorts of things. Keep in mind that there's no prerequisite of doing psychology or any of the sciences for that Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology, but just the Atar is just a little bit higher. If we can go next slide, please, and hand back to Peter.
Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, what I really want to talk about is pathways into these degrees, because yeah, obviously, not all of you are going to necessarily reach those ATARs. And the first thing I should say about that as well is we do at RMIT, as many universities have, we include SNAP and SEAS bonuses. I think both of those are still in operation, so you can ask more details about that with RMIT Connect. So that can boost your ATARs a little bit as well. And I believe in all three of these degrees, if you've done legal studies as part of your VCE, that also gives you a tiny boost as well. But what I also want to emphasize is that, yeah, if you don't find yourself quite making these ATARs, but you really want to get into these degrees, my main advice is don't panic, because there are lots of pathways you can use to get into those spaces through vocational education. So at RMIT, there are lots of different VE or vocational education courses you can take at RMIT, but the most suitable one and the key pathway that we offer that's connected to these degrees is the Associate Degree in Legal Practice. And that is run through the business school. It's kind of a degree that sits a bit halfway between normal vocational education, like advanced diplomas, and halfway between a bachelor degree. And some of the courses you would do within that actually also are the exact same courses you would take within legal and dispute studies, for example. It's a bit easier to get into. As you can see, the ATAR is, or was last time, 51.7. And if you get a bit higher than that, you're actually guaranteed as a pathway, once you complete the Associate Degree in Legal Practice, which is 2 years, a guaranteed pathway into one of these degrees. So that's a really good option for you to consider if you can do that. But yeah, as I said, don't panic at this stage about the ATARs. Use some other sort of degree, vocational education diploma or associate degree to get in, and do well enough in that, and then you can transfer across. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure you know about that. Next slide, please. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of trying to get into the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies, the one that I manage, is this year we're actually piloting an early offer program. So I'm hoping some of you will have heard of that already. That means that you can potentially apply for Legal and Dispute Studies early, so already, and potentially get in on a slightly lower ATAR, because your application will be assessed not only on your ATAR, but a balance between that and some other things that you put in your application, which is about skills that you have and experience that you have beyond the VCE classroom. So as it says here, you'd be assessed on 5 categories of transferable skills, and you need to meet 2 of the 5 categories. And there's more details online about how to apply for this early offer. And the deadline for applying has actually now been extended by a week, so that's the 5th of September. So it's fairly close, but still plenty of time to put in an application to try to get in early, and then potentially not have to have quite such a high ATAR to get in. So yeah, definitely more information about that available online as well. Thank you. I'll now hand back to Rob again. Next slide, please.
Thanks so much, Peter. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the facilities that RMIT offers. Obviously, right now, we are not facing ideal circumstances with being able to get out of our houses in any way, but you know, RMIT is looking to build the sort of online side of the experience. Obviously, we have online teaching facilities, that's all sorted, but we're trying to sort of build a sense of belonging online to students. But you know, this is a work in progress, but we're looking to sort of do that. But when we are back on campus, there is so much to look forward to about the RMIT campus. I'm a huge fan of the city location that we have. It's so convenient to get to in terms of public transport. There's so much to sort of do when you're on campus, both like in terms of study, but also, you know, a little bit of leisure, having some time out. The campus is really excellent. Like it's almost built into the city. You'll sort of, as you move around the campus, you're moving in and out of the city onto campus. It's a really fun space. RMIT also has some, like a real sort of historical legacy in terms of the location and its connection to the criminal justice system. It has these amazing old former magistrates courts, you know, displayed here. It has the old Melbourne jail where Ned Kelly was imprisoned and executed, I believe. Yeah, so but it has this kind of ongoing connection to criminal justice in Victoria. There's, you know, the buildings, the RMIT campus buildings are really exciting to explore. The new building 8 and 10, it's kind of like, it's like they call it a vertical laneway. Each floor is a little bit different, and as you sort of move through the floors, you can discover all these new things. It's a really fantastic place to study and hang out. There's a million coffee shops. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back on campus as soon as we can. Lectures may not be, you know, something that happens that soon, but sort of tutorials, you know, the small group classes are things we are able to do as soon as the restrictions ease a bit. So that future is potentially not that far away for us. You know, it's entirely possible we'll have small group teaching in 2022 for you to experience. Anyway, thanks for, sorry, I've got overexcited in my spiel. Let me hand over to Brianna, who's going to talk to you about our industry connections.
Thanks, Rob. Look, one of the things that I get excited about is really this idea of industry connection. I know that sounds really abstract, so I want to take a moment to explain to you really what that means, because this is not just something that we say that we do. The industry, as in the criminal justice or the psychology professions, are embedded in our programs. If we think about the sorts of staff that we have working with us as colleagues, a good example is probably the fact that I'm a practicing criminal lawyer and also a clinical psychologist. Michelle is a criminal lawyer. On our staff, we have experts in mediation, we have forensic psychologists, we have clinical psychologists, we have psychologists. We really have the leaders of the areas that we teach in, which means that the sorts of things that we teach are going to be the live issues in those particular areas. It means that we are really trying to be at the forefront of the research that we're writing, which means that the teaching experience and the learning experience for students is as rich as we can possibly make it. Look, in any one of our courses in any given day, you can expect to see perhaps a Supreme Court judge coming in to do a lecture. You might see a magistrate, you could see a consumer from the mental health field, you could see some prisoners who attend class with some of our students. We've really got this fantastic connection with industry. That means that the students that participate in our programs have really unparalleled experience and unparalleled access to industry projects. And look, if I'll just hand back over to Michelle and change slides, Michelle's going to spend a bit of time telling you about those industry projects.
Thanks, Brianna. So I'm going to talk about these projects, but also just talk very briefly about how we do prepare you for the workplace across the degrees, and introduce that by talking very, very briefly about the pathways to further education, which allow you to specialise in key areas. So in addition to the honours degree that Rob spoke about, we also offer a graduate certificate in Justice and Criminology, a graduate certificate in Domestic and Family Violence, a Master of Justice and Criminology, and a Master of Public Policy. In addition to these further pathways, we have several projects that allow students to actually create change and achieve, well, ideally, hopefully achieve justice while they're engaged in the programs, in these programs. And these projects really do give students life-changing experiences. And as I guess as a bonus, along the way, our students do really change the lives of other people. So, for example, we have the Bridge of Hope Innocence Initiative, which I happen to run. And students will participate in this through an internship, either an elective or a core. Sometimes students choose to do both. And in this project, students, staff and industry work together to investigate cases of people who think they've been wrongfully convicted. And if we believe there's been an injustice, then we work to prove their innocence. There's also the very well-renowned Inside Out Prison Exchange program, which is the only one in Australia, and it's unique to RMIT. And a student in this program, you'll have the most amazing opportunity to study alongside prisoners in prison. And in doing that, you will find out how you change their lives, because you bring the world to them in prison. For that moment in time, they get to feel as if they are normal people, you know, with the same interests as everybody else. They get to feel as if they are themselves again, and that's just such an amazing feeling. And you'll also change your own understanding of yourself by engaging with them and learning their stories and what they can tell you about the system. So it's one of the most amazing experiences any student can have, and many of the graduates of our program would tell you the same. So the very practical aspects of these programs allow students to, you know, have an experience of the real world and the workplace, and apply everything that they've learned. And these projects are available to any of our undergraduate students. So you'll be able to experience all of this and apply it before you head out to your future career destinations in criminology and wherever else you choose to study. Next slide, please. It's a bit of a disappointing slide when we talk about the global opportunities, because normally I'd be able to say, well, you could go to a study tour to Malaysia, which Rob's very actively involved in every year, and that's an amazing experience. You get to see the justice system in Malaysia. The courts open up, all the other organisations, prison open up, so you can have a really good look at the inside. And as soon as we can, that will be back on the agenda. You can also, if you choose, and let's just leave COVID to one side, you can do an internship overseas, anywhere you like. You can study overseas on an exchange, or you can do an entire kind of semester over there and then come back. So there are lots of opportunities. There are overseas placements, exchange, study tours. We have really great connections with a whole range of universities, as you can see, across the world. And even now, despite the pandemic and the fact that we can't physically be there, we've got some really great partnerships online that will allow you to at least experience it virtually if you can't physically at the moment. But we are all very hopeful that will change next year. Next slide, please. Career outcomes. The great thing about criminal justice at RMIT, or criminology and justice studies at RMIT, is the sheer diversity of career outcomes for students when they graduate. So you can work in government, you can work in law and policy reform, you can work in law enforcement, through policing, through border force. You can work overseas in law enforcement. You can work on non-government organisations, human rights organisations. If you like, your focus can be on victim support and advocacy. You can work for refugee centres. You can work for a whole range of different court services, tribunals, dispute resolution organisations. And you can also work with prisoners in prison and out in the community. So it is, we really can offer a really wide range of, future career ideas for you to think about and career outcomes. And next slide, please. So the last couple of slides are making sure that you're aware of the important dates. So as you can see, our semester seems to start a little bit earlier next year, which I think is probably a good thing. On the 21st of February, that's orientation week, and then the first week of the semester will be that week after that. And similarly in second semester, if you decide to perhaps take, defer your study for the first 6 months and start second semester, which is certainly possible to pick up your first year study. And then you'll also have an orientation week there as well. And next slide, please. So this is the end of our discussion. And what we've got after this, if you've got any outstanding questions about any of the degrees, so that's the Bachelor of Legal and Dispute Studies, the Bachelor of Criminal Justice, and the Bachelor of Criminology and Psychology, you can join Peter, Rob and Brianna in separate Q&A chats, which will be available to you in the Q&A chat. And that's it from us. Are there any questions that we can answer directly? Oh, very good. Sorry? I was going to pass over to Rob. I just noticed there was a very good question that somebody posted about our placements and internships, two different things. We tend to use them interchangeably. There's different universities use them in different ways. Sometimes an internship it gets confusing because some organisations offer year-long internships and pay you. We tend to use the word internship to describe all of it. So field placement, field experience and internship. Sorry, Rob, I cut you off.
No, I was literally just pointing you towards that question because that's a really good one to speak on. But I'll just jump onto that question as well. Like, one thing I really want to emphasize is that when it comes to workplace experience, there are placements and then there are placements. What you'll often find at universities, and to be honest, I was a skeptic of work placements before I came to this degree and taught it. Often what happens is the onus is completely on you to find a placement. You'll have to go out to the agency, ask them if you can work with them, and then you'll rock up. You'll end up sort of making coffee, your activities won't really be that useful, and you won't really feel part of an organisation. What we do at RMIT with your placement opportunities across all 3 degrees is you have the opportunity to partake in very meaningful work. We work with our partner agencies, and this includes all the large criminal justice agencies in Victoria, to make sure that there is a sort of a set of roles that are valued within the organisation that happen every single year. So these placement opportunities are part of these organisations. They sort of need that capacity and sort of look forward to having students undertake work. So the placement opportunities we think are really valuable. We work really hard with the department counterparts to make sure the work is useful, valuable, both for you and for the department itself.
Thanks, Rob. So I think this would be a good point to thank you for coming along, and thank you for taking the time to learn about our globally recognised programs. And then for any more information about our programs, be sure to check the information available on the website. Otherwise, hopefully we will see some of you in the different chat sessions. Thank you, everyone.